Welcome to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and on this episode, I tell you what, this is going to be very, very interesting. Rachel Lang is with us. She is a professional astrologer. She's a psychic medium, a healer, and a regular contributor to a variety of publications, including LVBX Magazine, Omega News, Bustle, Well Plus Go, and more. Rachel's going to be discussing Western astrology, how it can be used to determine compatibility between zodiac signs, finding love. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Tina. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, I'm so excited. And woo woo to Rachel. She is a homegirl right out of St. Louis, but currently
That's
now
right.
in LA. And that was just I was so glad to hear that, Rachel.
Yeah. I have, I think, a big, huge spot in my heart for St. Louis. My family's there. I go back as often as I can. I just love it there.
Yes. So hats off to the Cardinals and the Blues here. I'm sure you know
Yes.
all about it, right? Right.
Yep. And we have your Rams now. So,
Yes, I know. I know. Yeah. Well, you're taking good care of them, I guess. So,
yep. Yeah, we are.
all right. So anyway, Rachel. So, I know a little bit about astrology,
Mhm.
but I always get these things where people say, well, it's kind of misunderstood, I think, astrology, because people sometimes look at me and they're like, oh, you're into that stuff. And I don't know, I don't know, for some reason it kind of seems like sometimes people have like a negative sort of
Mm.
connotation with it, or that it's some kind of hocus pocus doo-doo-doo-doo. I don't know, but there's really some science behind all of this, right? And so I
Absolutely.
want you to kind of
Yeah.
break that down. So you're into Western astrology. Can you share the different kinds of astrology and how this is connected to science and all of that?
Sure. So there's Chinese astrology, there's Vedic astrology, the Mayans have their own astrological system. Like different groups have different ways of calculating different signs, calculating their own astrological systems. Western astrology is something that was developed. I mean, this has been going on for about 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the Greeks and the Romans were the ones who really sort of um, defined it and structured it to the way that we understand it today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we talk about astrology as a science, it is a science like psychology in that it's based in case studies and evidence from watching certain trends and certain cycles happen over time and seeing how they affect our human lives.
Hmm.
And the cycles we're talking about are the planetary cycles.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so any astrologer is going to know a lot about space and a lot about the movement of the planets, and then we're also going to understand how the movement of the planets affects or influences our lives here on Earth, including our personalities, including romantic compatibility, including things that we're seeing happening in the world, kind of like our societal events and the different changes that we see, even things like earthquake, like economic shifts. We
Wow.
can usually draw correlations between what's going on here and astrological cycles that are happening.
Yes. I took an
Mm-hmm.
astrology class. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I've never really liked science, but in college, because as a middle schooler and a high schooler, I'll tell you what, I stayed far away from science. Like I was like, get me out of this class. But when I went to college, I actually, I took an astronomy class, and with the study of the planets and the stars and the constellations, and that's when I was like, I saw the whole like Gemini constellation, and like
Yeah.
that there were stars, constellations that were connected to like the zodiacs, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I found that to be very, very, very interesting. So I've always known, been into the zodiacs, right? So I'm an
Mm-hmm.
Aries. I'm an Aries, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What can I say? The Ram, go Rams,
Yep.
right? And I Geminis and Sagittariuses and Libras, and I really have not really studied it, but I've kind of learn some things along the way, just with
Hmm.
personalities of people. And I mean, to me, there is some validity to that. And like you're saying, there's a strong case for all of this because I've seen, different Aries people and how they kind of act and, their personality and the trends, and some things I've just seen to be true. Scorpio
Yeah,
people and, Gemini people and Sagittariuses and all of this. And so I'm very, very glad to have you on the show because I really want you to break this down and sort of help our audience to understand this as well. So, are there some zodiacs that have certain characteristics? I mean, is this really true? Like what I've been seeing throughout my life, is it really true? Are certain zodiacs, prone to have certain type of personality sort of characteristics?
absolutely. So every sign has its own unique set of needs, wants, desires, and interests and challenges. And but the thing is that we have so much more than just our sun sign.
Hmm.
So often I'll hear people say like, "I'm a Scorpio, but I don't sound like anything I read about Scorpios." The sun is one aspect of your chart. When we look at an astrological chart, we map out where all of the planets were at the time of your birth.
Wow.
And what's cool about the chart is that every single person's chart is so different because it's based on the day, the time, and the place of your birth.
Wow.
So so your chart, you could be born the same day as somebody,
Uh-huh.
but have a totally different or a very different chart, not a totally different chart, but a very different chart.
Because of the time.
Um,
Because of the time.
exactly, and
Wow.
the place. So even if you're born at the same time of day at a place where someone else is born in a different country, like their chart's going to look different.
Really?
So yeah, and these cycles, because the outer planets move so slowly, the astrological cycles don't repeat themselves for thousands of years. So your unique personality and your unique chart is so special, and there's nobody like you. And that's
Wow.
what's amazing about astrology. When you start to learn how all of your planets fit together and how they relate to your personality, and when you start to see uh, these different aspects of your chart, then really it's a tool for self acceptance. It's a tool for self understanding.
Wow. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing from you, Rachel, is that sun signs, what I've been
Uh huh.
mentioning, like Sagittarius, Aries, Scorpio, Virgo, all of these, that's sun signs.
Right.
And we tend to just, open up the newspaper and we see these horoscopes and we're like, okay, I'm an Aries, I'm gonna read this. You know what I'm saying?
Uh huh.
That's one thing is what I'm hearing from you.
Yep.
But that chart and really looking at, your birth date and the time and the year in which you were born and all of that creates what you call a chart, which helps you to see things even on a much deeper level about the person.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah. And so, I'll give you an example. I have your
Yes.
chart here.
You want to talk about this
I
now?
have.
Oh God.
I
Oh
have
God.
your chart.
Okay.
So, for example, so you have an Aries sun,
Right.
but at the time of your birth, the moon is in the sign of Capricorn.
Mm.
And the moon relates to our deepest emotional part. It's like where we go for comfort, what we need, and it's a big basis of our personality. The moon in Capricorn is ambitious, it's driven, and it has a real need to have a goal that you're working toward. Does
Wow.
that resonate with you or make sense to you?
Oh my God. Anybody that knows me is going to be like, yes, that's her. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And when we're talking about love and we're talking about relationships, the moon is where we feel at home. And so if you have a compatible moon sign, like if your partner's sun sign is in a harmonious relationship with your moon sign, which yours is very, very much, then there's a natural sense that you belong together, or that this person is family to you, and that you can create a harmonious home.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something. Well, we're gonna dig into that a little deeper. I don't want to get into that
Okay.
right now, but I'm
Okay.
so interested. I'm like on the tip of my seat here, okay? Because I want to
Mhm.
hear more about this. But before we do, so like when you're looking at that chart, that's more on a deeper level, like you were just saying. But or do you find that people of certain zodiacs are attracted to people? Um, certain zodiacs. So, first off, let's talk about like there's earth signs, right? There's fire signs, there's
Mhm.
water, there's what's the other? Earth's air. Okay, air.
Air.
So, can you
Mhm.
like break down which one of those signs is the air, which one is earth, which one is fire, which one is water,
Sure.
and what that means?
Air signs. We'll start with fire.
Okay.
Because fire's Aries. It's the first sign in the zodiac. And fire signs tend to be very passionate. They are. If you think about the element of fire, fire wants to like a spark. One little tiny spark can catch a wildfire
Oh
going.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's
And
me.
so,
No, I'm
yeah, so
kidding.
fire signs can be really persuasive. They like a lot of activity. They need to be on the move. They can get very stagnant if they're bored.
Yeah.
Um, our fire signs are Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo.
Okay.
And and actually, if your sun sign is in the same element with other people's sun signs, you tend to really gravitate toward those people. And there's this natural sense that you all are on the same wavelength.
Okay.
Um, Earth signs are Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo.
Okay.
And Earth is practical. It's grounded. It's actually really based in. It kind of has a real need for material security, so money, a strong sense of you know um, that your life is organized and structured in a certain way. Earth signs tend to also, in terms of love, need a lot of physical touch and need to have like good surroundings. Like their physical environments are really important to them.
Okay. This is what was that? Taurus.
Um,
Taurus. What were those again?
Virgo and Capricorn.
Okay. All right. Got it.
Yeah, and then our water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And water is the sign of emotion. That doesn't mean that all water signs are super emotional and touchy feely.
Right.
It just means that when they feel things, they feel them differently. They feel them deeply, rather, and they don't always feel comfortable expressing their emotions out to other people. They need to build relationships over time. They need to build up trust because they take everything to heart, and so
Hmm.
they can have a difficult time showing their vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Um, but so water signs, yeah, they're also they feel other people's energies. So these are our empathic people
Hmm.
and people who are more sensitive. Get their feelings hurt a little bit easier in
Okay.
relationships.
Okay.
Yeah. And then our air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And air is a sign, air is the element of the mind, communications, ideas. If you think about air carries sound. Air carries it carries light. It moves birds across the sky, planes.
Mm-hmm.
It's an invisible element, but it's one that's all about transferring ideas and things that aren't necessarily tangible or visible. So air signs need to talk. They like to know things. They like to learn. They like to share ideas. Often in relationships, air signs can fall in love with someone's mind before they even meet them face to face.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the signs that are doing probably the best in this time of the coronavirus. When all we have are virtual dating, and that's our number one option.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so the air signs. So I think the air signs. This is they're likely managing this better than other signs.
They're in their element. So now, what was that
Yep,
again? The air signs again, again.
Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius.
I see. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So when you were talking about the different, characteristics of each one, I guess I kind of resonated with. There was something in it that I was like, okay, yeah, I feel that way too. So I
Mhm.
guess when you're looking at the chart, then, and you're breaking down all of those things that we just talked about, your birth date, the place you were born, the time, and all of that. Is it possible then that you can have a little bit of the tendencies of others based on maybe where you're, like you were just talking about, the moon and whatever um is that possible?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Um, we have some people are rare and they have like everything in one element. But for you for example,
Yeah.
you have a lot of fire and a lot of earth,
Okay.
and and so you're likely to resonate with those elements a little bit more than water and a little bit more than air.
Okay. Which is, I guess, as I'm sitting here listening to you and you talking about this, it makes me think about those signs that tend to gravitate towards me or that I tend
Uh
to
huh.
kind of connect with. And all of my life, it's kind of been like the Virgo,
Uh huh.
the Sagittarius, the Leo,
Mm-hmm.
or the Gemini.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
one relationship that I had that was the absolute worst relationship that I've ever had was with another Aries. That was horrible.
Mm.
uh, this person was born the day before me, and it was a constant struggle. And so, therefore,
mm.
I thought to myself, never again, another Aries.
Yeah.
No. So anyway, is
Yeah.
that possible? I mean, is that where can two signs sort of clash possibly, or is that do you hear of that often, or
Yeah. I do sometimes. Well, with certain signs get along really really well
okay,
with their same sign. But with Aries, you're both ruled by the planet Mars,
okay,
and Mars is kind of a me first planet. It wants to be in charge.
oh,
And so with two Aries, there can sometimes be power struggles depending on other factors in the chart and depending on your where you grew up and who your childhood and things like that.
mm-hmm,
But sometimes when we're with the people with dating people who have our same sun sign, it can be like seeing all the best and worst of ourselves all the time,
yes, oh God,
you know.
yes,
And like some aspects of ourselves we just don't want to see, and those play out in our relationship, and sometimes Libras trigger me so much. Look, I'm a Libra, so
okay,
sometimes I'll see a Libra doing something that's quintessentially Libra and I'll think, oh my god, I hope I don't do that. um so I think it depends on the person and it depends on other factors in the chart, but I think you're right. I think sometimes it can clash.
yes, my goodness, all right, mm-hmm, all right. So going to the chart thing. So once you obtain a person's chart, like you have of mine, you look at all of this and you make some determinations. You talked about Capricorn and this and that with me. You kind of determine someone's cardinal planet, I guess, whether or not they're fixed or mutable. So let's break down the chart and some of the things that you're able to see as a result of looking more deeply.
Sure. So you can look at the moon. Again, the moon tells us how that person processes emotions. If they have their moon in a water sign, you know that they're going to be more sensitive, and so you can be really gentle with them, and also find ways to relate to that person.
And this is where the moon
Mercury,
was. I'm sorry, this was where the moon was
yeah,
at the time of their birth.
exactly, yes,
Okay. All right.
yes,
Good.
yeah. And where Mercury was at the time of your birth is
Okay.
how you communicate.
Hmm.
It's also how you think and learn, and in relationships it's it's how it can actually even be your love language.
Wow.
um, then Venus is our love and our money, but it's also how much do we value ourselves, what is our self-worth. And in relationships it's how you flirt, it's how you attract your love. Um, and it's also for men the type of, or for anyone who, I don't want to just I don't want to gender this, but like it can be for some people who they're attracted to
Okay.
or what they look for in a partner.
Okay.
Mars Mars is the where Mars was at the time of your birth relates to your passion, your sex drive. And it's also, it can be a really important point in relationship compatibility too, um, because it represents like what motivates you, what turns you on, what gets you excited. And so if you have two in your compatibility charts, if you have two strong Mars influences, then, or your Marses relate to one another favorably, then you have, it's a signature of having that kind of chemistry that lasts for a really long time.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Neat. Neat.
Yeah.
That is really something. And so
Yeah.
what is fixed and mutable? What does this mean?
Sure. So fixed, cardinal, and mutable
Yeah.
are qualities and characteristics of each sign. Our cardinal signs are outgoing. The cardinal energy is all about making something happen, taking action, initiating a change. Our cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Capricorn, and Libra. And if you think about the cardinal signs, each one starts at the very beginning of a season. So March, uh, the March equinox is Aries, and it's a turning of a new season, it's the new beginning.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so when you think about cardinal signs, that's the energy that they embody. Something new. They can be on the they're kind of our entrepreneurs, people who are always seeing a need and wanting to
Fulfill it.
take action to meet that need or resolve that need.
Yep.
Um, then our fixed signs come right after cardinal signs. And so if you think about it, like right after you start something, you've got to dig your heels in and make it work.
Okay.
And this is our fixed signs. These are our fixed signs: Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius are our fixed signs.
Uh-huh.
And fixed signs can be a little bit resistant to change. They also, they're the hard workers. They're the people who, when they're in a relationship, they stick. They don't even like to commit if they don't think that it's going to have long term potential.
Mm.
Or sometimes they can get into a relationship or get into a job or something, and they don't leave in time. Like they stick in there even when it's like when it's time to go.
Right.
Um, but fixed signs are trustworthy. They're dependable. And the mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And mutable signs are kind of, they're like, so if fixed signs kind of stick in and dig their heels in and commit, mutable signs are getting ready for something new. It's like they're adaptable. They're they're looking for sort of new beginnings, new opportunities. And often they tend to be a little bit more flexible. So that doesn't mean that they easily change their minds. It just means that they're more apt to try to find compromise
Okay.
and solutions, rather than being totally stubborn and fixed on their position.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at the chart and you've talked about all these things that you notice by looking at the chart, this is really it's interesting because, like you said, I mean, it love and relationships is one thing in compatibility, but you can also determine. I think you got to mention this. People's potential, their purpose,
Mm-hmm.
their destiny. Like, how do they work? I mean, you just said that. I think you said Aries were kind of like entrepreneurial. The what was it?
Yeah, the cardinal signs.
The cardinal signs, exactly. So you can really not only look at compatibility in love and relationships, but you can really look at like work potential and purpose and destiny as well, looking at all of this.
Absolutely, yes. And there's a point in particular that we look at for destiny. I mean, we didn't talk too much about the outer planets and the rising sign, but those are also factors in the chart.
Okay,
And the North Node. Oh, did you want to talk about those
yes,
or?
absolutely. Let's talk about
Okay,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So the rising sign is well, let's talk about the node first because that is actually the point of that's kind of the destiny point. It's like your North Star,
Hmm.
and the North Node represents what you're here to accomplish, what you're here to do, and that's the big point of purpose in your life. And whenever you're following your North Node, that tends to be when you feel more fulfilled.
All right.
Yeah. But it's not always comfortable. It's like kind of like that area just beyond your comfort zone. So whatever like terrifies you and makes you want to quit right when you're on the precipice of something amazing happen, that's
Hmm.
often the North Node territory.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Mhm. Um and so it's what you're if you're looking at your life purpose, if you're looking at, what kind of career to do, really following the North Node is where you're going to find the most reward and fulfillment.
Okay.
Um, then we also have the rising sign. The rising sign is what's on the eastern horizon at the time of your birth. And the rising sign is how other people see you. And often your physical characteristics are,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So for example, um, someone with a Gemini rising might have might have a faster metabolism depending on other things in their chart.
Hmm.
Um, Needs to be on the go. They might have a difficult time sitting still, and so these are physical expressions of that part of the chart. Um, and then we have the outer planets, which help to define. Um, well, the outer planets move so slowly, so everyone in your high school class is likely going to have the same Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, and maybe even Saturn, depending on when Saturn moves into the new sign.
Hmm.
So these are kind of our generational planets.
Okay.
Um, and they represent things that we're here to work on to evolve and to grow. So kind of those big challenges, those limitations, those obsessive thoughts, those spiritual beliefs and spiritual ideals that we inherit and that we develop over time. The outer planets represent those kind of big picture themes for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said everybody in the high school class. That's because we're all kind of born at the during the same sort of year, and so these things are kind of for all of us that are
Yeah,
born.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to
Yes.
make sure I was following you. Okay. Very, very deep, deep stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Rachel. So, how'd you learn
Yes,
all
it
of
is.
this? How did you learn all of this?
I have been studying for a really long time. I discovered a book at the St. Louis Library back in the 90s and when I was in high school. And it, and ever since then, I became fascinated. So I studied on my own, and then ended up taking some classes. Um, and then I ended up working with mentors, and I regularly go to conferences. Astrology is one of those subjects that once you start learning, there's so much information.
Hmm.
You, I feel like I only scratched the surface. So it's fascinating, just all the different layers.
Yeah. Are you like continually learning too along your way, along your
Yeah, yeah,
journey? Yeah.
definitely.
Wow.
Hmm.
So, what is the difference between, because I think before I got on the call with you, I was looking at my email and something popped up and it said like numerology or numerologist or something like that. And I was like, I wonder if that has any connection to astrology, numerology. Like, is it the same or is it different? Or, and if it is, what's the difference? Do you happen to know or?
Yeah, it's numerology is different from astrology. Astrology looks at the planets
Right.
and different space objects. And numerology looks at the numbers and like of your name and of
Mm,
your birth date.
mm.
So it kind of calculates those numbers and brings them all into one solid number, and then that gives you details about your personality.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, so they're different, but all of these, but both numerology and astrology are based on, and I'll get a little bit deep here for a second,
Yeah, go ahead.
but they're both based on principles of harmonics. And music is also based on the principles of harmonics. You know how some notes, when you play them together, sound really harmonious and
Okay.
sound really good,
They work
and
together, yeah.
some are like like I don't want to hear that. Um, so so all of so all of these systems are based in that principle, the principle of harmonics. That some things resonate really well with one another, and some things are in discord.
All right. Okay, good.
Yeah,
Sounds good. So you've been doing this then you mentioned kind of got getting into this around high school. You've been doing all these years. You've been studying, you teach classes. So tell me a little bit about the classes that you actually teach and all of that.
sure. I teach three. I teach several different classes, but three specific astrology classes. One is just a basic intro, like learn how to do your own chart and learn how to do the charts of other people. And then I teach a class on transits, which is a predictive tool. And then I teach another class on progressions, which is another predictive tool.
Okay.
Um, and then I'm regularly offering like webinars, and um, I have a new moon meditation every month where we talk about astrology and talk about what's happening for the month. And I also do teach some psychic mediumship development classes as well.
All right. Now you mentioned progressions. Did we
Mm-hmm.
talk about that? Did we talk about that? Have we dug into that yet? I don't remember hearing you talk about
No, I
progression.
don't think we have.
Okay, can you talk about
For,
that? What is that?
yeah. So your birth chart reflects who you were born to be, and we grow and evolve over time. And you can look at you can advance your natal chart certain ways to see where you are on your journey and what themes are up for you right now, what life events might be playing out. So it's a predictive tool, even though I hate that idea of prediction because I think we co-create our own future. But a progress chart shows how you've evolved from where you began, and also it can show kind of like a forecast of things that are happening in your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is why you have these like horoscopes are written and all that kind of stuff, right? Is that right?
Um, Horoscopes are dealing more with transits. So transits are the cycles that are happening and the planets that are moving in the heavens today and how they're aspecting your chart. So your horoscope is based on how those outer planets are relating to your sun sign.
Wow. There's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts to
There is.
all of this. Geesh, you've studied
Yeah.
a lot. Okay. So, and I think I heard you on another, it's interesting because I think I heard you on another podcast and you talked about like your spouse today and
Mm-hmm.
how before when you met this person, you were like, you heard about their birth date, I guess. And like, at first you were like, oh no, you had some reservations and then you were okay and then you guys continue to date and things are okay. So tell me about that. Like, how do you get through always wanting to like assess somebody through their birth date and stuff when you meet them? Probably, I mean, immediately, do you do that? Or I don't know, how does that work for you? I would think I
Yeah.
couldn't help it if I were you.
Yeah. It's really tempting to do that. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, when we're talking about compatibility in relationships, we have to go back to our hearts. You know, love is a heart matter and not a head matter, and and uh, and so I think that that I always tell people, if you look at your sun sign and it shows that you're incompatible with someone else, don't listen to that. If you feel a connection, if you feel a spark, there are other things in your chart that could be kind of motivating that. And
Okay.
so I always think it's important for us to give a chance, if we really feel connected to someone. Um, so yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I think it's so easy to look at like go online and look at your sun sign and see who you're most compatible with, and those are only based on one factor.
Okay.
Um, so, for example, uh, if your sign is opposite someone else's sign, like if you're a Taurus and your opposite sign is Scorpio, that's not a deal breaker.
Okay.
Um, it, because often there are some signs and some people, some individuals who it it won't work if it's too easy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like they want a little bit of conflict, they want a little bit of tension, because they're here to do some major growth, and that's how we grow is by bringing people into our lives who introduce tension or introduce like who stretch us in comfortable and uncomfortable ways.
So how do you tell? You mentioned that these two opposite signs. How do you know that you're opposite someone? Like I'm an Aries. How would I know what my opposite signs are? Or maybe you can just tell me right now, but then how would I know, just a person that's listening right now, how do they know what their opposite sign is?
Um, so it's always a sign that's exactly 180 degrees away from your sign.
Okay.
So for Aries, it's Libra. For Taurus, it's Scorpio. For Gemini, it's Sagittarius. For Cancer, it's Capricorn. For Leo, it's Aquarius. For Virgo, it's Pisces. And then you can just the other signs. It's what we just mentioned.
Yeah,
So
that's funny.
yeah,
That is so funny.
yeah.
So,
And often there's like dynamic attraction between opposites. So
really?
it's never a deal breaker. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that person represents like aspects of you that are in the shadows, or it's uh they're that saying opposites attract.
Right.
There can be a real pull towards someone who's your opposite.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So, because I mean, I was just thinking, I think I said this earlier, like there are just some signs that are just like typical for me. Like just noticed some trends, with them and their personality, right? And so, I mean, I have this friend. We've known each other for a long time. We worked years ago together in the '90s, and he has only dated Capricorn women. And he is
Mm.
so solid in that every Capricorn woman that he's dated, and he's a Leo, by the way, or no, maybe a Cancer, July 17th. When's his birthday's July
Yeah, that's
17th.
Cancer.
Okay. So
Uh-huh.
he has dated Capricorns along his life, and he is just sold out. These Capricorns don't like to commit. And I mean, he is just, he just knows. I mean, is there some validity to that? I mean, can you just kind of tell with some that they're just the same in their personality?
Mm. There are some similar traits. Um, I would say Capricorns only commit if they know that it's going somewhere. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to waste their time unless they feel like there's a future. They're ambitious. They tend to see the long picture, the long game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so there are definitely similar traits to each different sign.
All right. Okay. So now, Rachel, you did get my information. I gave
Mm-hmm.
you my birth date, I gave you the year that I was born, and I gave you the time that I was born.
Uh huh.
And I also gave you the sort of that information for a committed partner that I have. But I want to first talk about my chart because I want you to now, that's why I want to kind of break down for the audience everything that you're able to see looking at a chart. And then now it'll make sense to people as we sort of break down my chart. They can make the connections with what you were stating earlier about the charts and what we see, if that makes sense.
Sure, sure. Well, I would say that first of all, and Tina, were you born in St. Louis?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. I thought so. So I would say that uh, that that you have first of all you have you actually have more earth than you have fire,
Mm,
which is great because your partner has a lot of earth as well. So there's just a natural sense of you're on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
You both have a real need for like making sure that the practical details of your life work out. Um, you are a practical person. You're not going to be the kind of person who's going to waste your time getting into a lot of different things. Like, I see you as being someone who's really focused. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Uh-huh. And ambitious and driven. Like, you have goals, and if you don't have a goal, then actually you could feel depressed.
Yeah.
Um, and there is a tendency with a Capricorn moon to be hard on yourself, and so that can lead to some, just feeling down or feeling like not good enough. Um, and that's why you drive. That's why you're so driven. That's why you kind of push yourself to higher levels. Does
Because
that make sense to you?
yes, yes, because you're wanting to fulfill a purpose, or you're wanting to be, progressing and moving and getting better. And if I'm feeling like I'm not, then I feel like there's something wrong.
Yep, exactly,
Hmm.
exactly.
Totally. Yeah. So,
You also have this lovely Cancer rising.
okay.
So that kind of the Cancer rising house is how other people see you.
Okay.
So you're seen as being very nurturing, very supportive, being a helper, being someone who people can rely on,
Okay.
and family oriented as well.
Okay.
So even though you have that Aries sun, which is feisty, which is ambitious, that's Aries is also a cardinal sign. So you're the kind of person who wants to make things happen. You also have your sun in the 11th house, which is the house that relates to friendships and social groups, and community. So this is an area of your life where if you don't have that strong sense of, of your tribe, of your community, of your people, then that can also lead to feeling like you're not making a difference, and then therefore feeling
Okay.
down on yourself.
Okay. Now
Does that
let's
make sense to you?
yes, but I want to make sure for the audience though,
Uh huh.
the sun
Yep.
at the time of birth, is that right?
Uh huh.
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Yes.
Following that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I look at all of this and think, and then I think that you have a life path that is very much about making a contribution,
Okay.
um, and giving back, um, to the point where you might actually push yourself a little bit too hard sometimes and need to balance it out with some relaxation. Does
Okay.
that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, uh, and then in terms of relationships, your Venus is in a great place. Venus is in Pisces. It's a sign that it really likes a lot, and so love and relationships and connections are 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 strong values for you. So it's no surprise that you're hosting a podcast
Yeah.
about love and
Yeah.
relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's Venus is right at the top of your chart, saying that this is a real point of purpose for you.
Mhm.
So you're you're in alignment with what your chart represents as being your path and your gift.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. And I often get the question, somebody will say to me, after an interview or something, why are you doing this show? And I mean, it's like, well, it just kind of feels right. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how to
Mhm.
explain it other than, I mean, it just kind of feels right. I mean, um, it's just something that I've always been very interested in, and always wanting to, you know, just wanting to fulfill. And so it just made sense. You know what I mean? It just made sense.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's funny. So what about how do you get into, when you're looking at someone's chart, getting into sort of you've mentioned purpose already, so like destiny, and then like maybe work and that kind of stuff, is there,
Mhm.
yeah, how do you use
Yeah,
it?
the you would look at, well, the sun sign is going to tell you where your most of your energy, like where your light shines. Sun is the brightest luminary in the heavens. So the sun sign is, if you're in Aries, is where you want to notice you'll find a lot of your strengths with the sun sign. And so for an Aries, that's entrepreneurial.
Okay.
That's being in a position professionally where you're making things happen, where you feel like you're in charge.
That's right.
Every sign has its own unique characteristics, and you can read about those online. There's so many resources right now.
Okay.
So start there, and then look at the North Node. That shows you kind of like your purpose, and the Moon shows you what you need. And so if you're looking at career, I would start with these three things.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier a love language, like with the moon. I think you said something about the moon sign and it also kind of being parallel with your love language. Can you see
Yeah.
anything with that for me?
Yeah, sure. Well, if your moon is so Mercury is actually the communication planet, and so Mercury is often our love language. The moon is like what we need. So, um, so if your Mercury is in an Earth sign, for example, then touch is going to be really important for you.
Mm-hmm.
If it's in an air sign, then that could be words of affirmation. And if it's in a water sign, I find quality time being one of those.
Yes.
And if it's in a fire sign, often it's gifts. But it's different for it depends on the moon sign is what we need, and it's like how we receive and feel love.
Mm-hmm.
But Mercury is how we communicate and express our love.
Okay.
So often the moon might be what you receive, but Mercury is what you give.
Okay.
The kind of love language that you give.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So speaking of love language, I gave you the sign of my committed partner, or so to speak. So anyway, significant other. So how do you see those connecting? Is it good, or are we kind of in the same? I know you said something about possibly being in the same place or on the same page.
Definitely, yes. Um, well, his moon is the same as your sun, which is beautiful, great compatibility, and meaning like his moon is in the same sign, so it's in Aries. Um, and your moon is in an Earth sign, which is very strongly compatible with his sun sign. So there's a lot of, and there are other points of compatibility too that I see that I can totally see this relationship working, and having both of you have the kinds of influences in your chart that show the ability to stick with it, the ability to keep each other on your toes and have fun, and also just you have similar needs. So yeah, I think it's really great compatibility.
Okay. Sounds good. So now if somebody's listening and they're like, well, I really like this. This is interesting. I'd like to reach out to Rachel and have her, look at my chart and tell me a little bit about, where the moon was, where the sun was when I was born, all that kind of stuff. And what does it say about me as far as my love language or my purpose and destiny, and the type of person that I am as far as work and all of that. Um, so how do they get in touch with you, and kind of walk us through the process that you do with a client when they want this kind of information?
Mm-hmm. Great, yeah. So they can get in touch with me. My website is rachelllangastrologer.com, and there you can schedule online. There's a contact form if you have any questions, and you can find out all about the services I offer, my classes, my groups, and even read your horoscope.
Okay. And you have you have a website with the horoscopes and everything on it. I was taking a
Mm-hmm.
look and I saw something for like the month of March, and then I saw April and that kind of thing. And so you're
That's right.
constantly changing that. And what other information
Yep.
is on your website also?
The different types of sessions I offer, you can schedule right there online.
Okay.
And articles and horoscopes, and meditations, all kinds of materials.
Well, I tell you what, I have learned a whole lot. I always learn a lot on these shows. I mean, every guest that
Yeah.
I have, it's just so interesting. But this really has helped me to see astrology on a deeper level, and understanding how you're able to see certain things. And it was interesting to see, you know, your birth date and time and everything, being able to share, show that much information. So very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
It's been great. And so, listeners, if you've enjoyed this show, this is what I need you to do. Like, you need to like, you need to give a comment, and you need to subscribe to the show so that I know, whether like not you like the information. Maybe I need to get somebody else on to talk about, some other information like numerology or something else, but it just kind of helps me to understand whether or not you've enjoyed the show, what you think, and then maybe it'll keep me on for a little while. So thank you so much, people, for listening to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and until next time, peace. And of course, don't forget love.